just kind of blown away at what's happening right now. I never would have thought I would be attending a conference about 11D. It's just amazing to think about. We've sort of been around for 7 years now, so it's a long project, and we got more to come. So as Mike said, I'm Zach. This is my visual resume. I started 11D back in 2017, and in some respects, it was to facilitate my personal website. And yeah, I was originally on WordPress back in 2007. I switched to Jekyll around 2012, 2013. And then, yeah, migrated to 11D shortly after launching. I do have some more background in the JavaScript world. I ran a JavaScript meetup for many years, and we did a conference, Nebraska JavaScript Conference. So, yeah, I've sort of been in the JavaScript ecosystem for a long time. I think a lot of folks might be aware of my work with web fonts and web performance, and yeah, hopefully we can bring that to 11D in the future. And so maybe some folks are also familiar with this meme from XKCD. It is sort of this teetering or the structure, and the caption is a project some random person in Nebraska has been maintaining. And yeah, I think that in some respects represents 11D, but I also think that 11D is a little bit more stable than that little tiny block may represent. We've been around for 7 years. We've had so many releases, and folks have really identified with how stable it is and how few breaking changes that we ship, because I don't like breaking changes myself. I use 11D for so many projects, and I don't want to have to go back and update those either. So hopefully you also feel that. And there are kind of many frameworks and tools and site generation things that exist on the web right now. And there's kind of something for everyone, right? And you can pick your flavor of tool that you identify with most, that you get the most benefit out of, that you get the most value from. And I think that's a great thing. There are frameworks that maybe represent someone that might want to send a billionaire to the moon. Not for me. There's a framework maybe that might represent someone that thinks this social network is still cool. Not necessarily for me. There's a framework that maybe wants to live in a world in which this is a normal thing. Not necessarily for me. And then there are other frameworks that really see the value in Google Reader and IndieWeb and the Internet Archive and having information accessible to everyone, and RSS, being able to share those things online, and really with a root in HTML, and not necessarily trying to funnel everything through JavaScript first. And so in my mind, there's kind of this two-dimensional graph here, and you can place all of these different tools in different spaces on this graph. On the left, you can see dynamic servers, this sort of moving away from static site generation. On the right, we have static sites, a folder full of files, as I've said. And then the top represents HTML first, multi-page applications that we've seen the marketing pivot to. And then on the bottom, we see sort of JavaScript first tools, bundler based tools, where everything sort of flows through JavaScript code that you write. And a lot of those are single page application based. You can see on the bottom left, we kind of have the most popular site generation tool right now, Next.js. It lives in that dynamic world, that JavaScript first world. And you can use Next.js in kind of different ways. They've added what they called server-side rendering mode, which allows you to serve HTML first in your in the code that is downloaded by visitors to the sites that you build. But it still has its roots in single-page applications. And Next also has a static export, which kind of goes more to the right. As a static site, you can use Next to export a static site. Now, importantly, I learned within the last couple of weeks that that does not include next image, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit later. I thought it was very interesting that you can do HTML, you can do JavaScript, you can do CSS, but you can't do images, and that doesn't come out of the box. And 11ty wants to exist in this top right quadrant, right? We want to be HTML first. We want to create websites that are multi-page applications. Above all, we want it to be a static site generation tool. That's what our roots is. That's what I really believe is the place that 11ty does the best work. And at the end of the day, I think static sites really have this amazing benefit of being the most secure, the fastest to serve, and they have a lot of these very great benefits that yeah, I think we are really doubling down on right now. Now, 11ty has kind of dipped its toes into more dynamic use cases. We had an Edge plugin and a serverless plugin, but importantly, we're sort of re-grounding ourselves into the static world and trying to be the best that we can be. And so there's all of these different site generation tools that exist, and some of them have sort of created different modes of use, modes of developing sites to where they can serve more than one of these quadrants simultaneously, or at least with the same or similar code bases. But importantly, 11ty really wants to be the best that we can in the top right. We want to be the best static site generation tool that we can be. And it's been so amazing to see the response to 11ty over the years. We have over 72,000 open source repositories on GitHub, people that are using 11ty, over 16,000 GitHub stars, which is amazing. We have over 21,000 friends online across all of our social media accounts. And we're now up to 8.7 million downloads on NPM, which I think is incredible. And a lot of sort of larger enterprise customers have started to use 11ty too. Some big names like CERN has a website using 11ty. NASA, TC39's website, the JavaScript specification folks, their website is built with 11ty. And it's, yeah, just again, so incredible to see the logo cloud that you can find on 11ty.dev that has all of these. And I think one of the core features of 11ty, or the secret sauce to 11ty, is that we don't have a moat by design. A lot of times when you have frameworks that have investors or some monetization behind it, some more aggressive monetization behind it, they want you to have a moat. And a moat is something that exists in the framework to keep you using the framework, whether that be a language format that it only runs in your tool and doesn't run independent of your tool, or whether that be some more runtime on request pieces like image optimization. Maybe the vendor that creates the framework also sells you on request image optimization, and they charge you by the image. And again, we'll go into that a little bit later. And the thing we've been working on for so long, I want to say almost a year now, is our next major release, 11ty 3.0. It runs in Node 18 or newer. And yeah, I'm super excited to tell you all about it. Just the number one thing, and I'll maybe have a very interesting number of points to make in this talk, but the number one thing is that it's written in ESM. Now, ECMAScript modules, ESM, is sort of the more standard way to write JavaScript that works in a variety of different contexts and runtimes. And so this is sort of a way for us to prepare for the future, to allow 11ty to run in a bunch of different ways and a bunch of different tools. And yeah, I think it's an important thing, although the subtleties of it may not be as convincing as we might want as developers. Practically, it just kind of means that you're converting module.exports in your code, in your JavaScript code, to be export default or named exports. They're at the bottom. You just change it to export. So there isn't too much change that happens when you're migrating your code to ESM, but I think it is important for the future. And if you look at the NPM ecosystem right now, there's this graph from Titus Wormer. They sort of maintain statistics on how many projects are using what mode. And you can see on the left, there's only 11.7% of projects on NPM are using ESM first. There are some people that are dual publishing as the other alternative, and the thing that most folks use is CommonJS. So some folks are publishing both ESM and CommonJS simultaneously. I'm not going to do that. And some folks are using a bundler to sort of pre-compile their CommonJS to ESM for usage. And so if you look at this graph, you might be a little worried that 11ty is using ESM, right? Because it doesn't seem to be all that common in packages that are published to NPM. And if you look at some of the existing frameworks out there right now, you can see 11ty and Astro are kind of on the left. We're doing ESM first. Svelte, Vite, and Nuxt are doing dual publishing. Remix and Gatsby sort of use a bundler or a transpilation-based approach. And Next.js is still using CommonJS. And so there is sort of a wide variety of things here. So what does this mean for your project? You can still keep using your existing configuration file. You can still keep using your project as is. You can still keep using CommonJS with 11ty. So you don't need to worry about that. So if you look inside of your 11ty configuration file right now, you can keep using this. It isn't a problem. You don't have to migrate your code over to use ESM. Just because 11ty is using ESM doesn't mean that you need to. And yeah, I mean, just practically speaking, you can import 11ty. So one of the main problems that people see when they're using ESM and CommonJS is that you can't require an ESM package. So if you use any of the bundled 11ty plugins that are already included, you will need to change your configuration file to look like this if you are going to be using Node 18. Now, Node is actually adding support for requiring ESM packages to Node, which is an amazing thing. It's just sort of come out in the last month or two. And you can use this today with Node 22 with this sort of command line flag experimental require module. So if you want to not change any of your code at all, you can use this approach. But it really doesn't take much to upgrade your project to use 11ty 3.0. Here's my personal website, Zachary.com. It is, I think, 3 files were changed. I changed my node minimum. I changed the import to be a dynamic import inside of my configuration file. And then my package.json, I just pointed to the new version. And again, your existing CommonJS code should work pretty much as is, especially if you're not using those bundled plugins. So you can use ESM if you want to convert your configuration file to be ESM. You can do that, and this is what that new syntax will look like: export default. And this might be the most straightforward way to do it because there isn't any special dynamic import that you need to do. You just import your plugins directly from the 11ty package. And yeah, this is great. This is maybe the most straightforward way to do it. But importantly, you can incrementally migrate to ESM too. You don't have to, it's not an all or nothing thing. So on the left side, we see your existing project might be using CommonJS. You can use ESM in that project with a .mjs file extension, and that's great. But if you want to start with ESM first, you can add type module to your package.json, and then the default.js will be interpreted as ESM. And you can use .cjs to fall back to that common JS format in Node. So you can really sort of use either of these approaches, and it really, I think, gives you an incredible amount of flexibility when you're dealing either with legacy projects or new projects from scratch. So one of the things I'm most excited to tell you all about today is the new features that we're shipping, that we've already shipped to 11ty Image. And I think this is just super exciting. I'm very excited about it. We have this new image transform plugin. So with just a couple of lines of config, we will automatically transform your HTML and do image optimization and image processing for you. And it's all sort of handled for you out of the box, which I think is incredible, and I'm using it everywhere. So this means no more worrying about shortcodes, no image shortcodes, no worrying about asynchronous contexts versus synchronous contexts. A lot of people that used handlebars, that's a synchronous language, it couldn't really do asynchronous shortcodes. And so we had this sort of complex way to do it. We don't need to worry about that anymore. Just use the transform method and it handles it for you with all of your templating languages. So you never have to manually add a width or a height attribute to an image again, not even for remote images. And I think this is a super unique feature that isn't available in a lot of alternative frameworks. A lot of them require you to do static imports, or for remote images, you have to add your width and height manually. Not in 11ty Images, we do it all for you. You don't have to worry about it. And the super, really cool, exciting thing that that we shipped just very recently is this new Transform on Request feature. This is given to you for free with the Transform plugin. You don't need to worry about it. It's automatically enabled for you. When you use 11ty in serve mode, we have a dynamic on request piece that will transform your images for you when they're requested in the browser, not as part of the build. So when you do --serve, we only optimize images that are visited in the web browser. And then on the right, we have the same when you run a normal 11ty build, not in server or local development mode. When you run a normal 11ty build, you get this full standard build output that you'd expect. So the right side is sort of the way it worked before. The left side is new for serve mode. And you can set your own widths here if you want to do that. And we sort of handle all of that for you, right? It works the same. If you want to set specific widths for an individual image, you can do that with the 11ty:widths attribute. Here we use a 200 and a 600 width output. And you don't have to worry about image versus picture either. We automatically swap that for you based on how many formats you're using, how many sizes you're using. You don't have to worry about that. So as an example, if you only want to output a WebP, by default, 11ty does WebP and JPEG. But if you want to only output one format, then you get the image tag. If you want to output multiple, then we switch to the picture tag. And what this gives us is near zero build cost for local development, which I am super excited about. So here's what it looks like. If you have 1,000 images running through the 11ty image pipeline right now, it would take about 6 seconds to build on my personal machine. These are just benchmarks I ran on my machine. And then in serve mode, it takes less than a second to start the server, even with 1,000 images going through that image optimization pipeline, which I think is incredible. We have another great feature called SVG short circuit. So if you feed 11ty image in SVG, we have this great new feature where it will actually compare the size of that SVG versus its raster counterparts, your WebP, your AVIF, your JPEG, your PNG, whatever. And we'll actually throw out the ones that are bigger than the SVG. So we do a file size comparison and say, hey, is this SVG? So we have this very complex Mexico flag here. Is the raster version of that flag smaller in a raster format or a vector format? And we prefer one over the other. So in your CMS, you can and then upload just giant SVGs and not have to worry about it. Or you can get a small SVG and we'll keep the SVG for you. So here's the classic Tiger. This one's only about 20 kilobyte compressed. So we throw out all of the raster images and keep just the SVG and an image tag for you, which I think is great. We have some cool configuration options coming in 11ty 3.0. You can do asynchronous work in your callback function now, which I think is great. We have this new config export that you can do. So a lot of times folks will return an object inside of their configuration callback. Now you can export that inside of your configuration file. And that is just an easier way to organize your code and allows us to access that a little bit earlier and keep it consistent in your config. We have new set input directory, set output directory methods. We have also those for includes and layouts, and every directory you might want to set, we now have a method for that. We have a new virtual templates feature, which allows you in configuration to create a virtualized template. And this is a super exciting feature because now it allows you to create, and it will allow plugins to create content in your 11ty sites as well, which I think is great. There's sort of an example of how to block all of the AI spiders that come to your site. And now we can have a plugin that does that for you and generates your robots.txt for you. I think that will be great for the RSS plugin as well. There's another great feature on 11ty now called our plain text bundler. You can create a bundle and you can add plain text to that bundle, and we'll create page-specific bundles for that code. So here's just some examples of using this in CSS to add some CSS to a per-page CSS bundle. And sort of WebC is already using this, but now it's coming to core as well. And this is how you output those bundles. Yeah, it just gets all of this CSS that's added to that bundle for the page, and then you can add it to a style block, or you can create your own bundle file if you want to bundle that into an external file as well. We have a great new plugin that allows you to link to input files, so files on your file system, which I think is amazing. You can link to a markdown file, and it will translate that to the URL for you. Allows your project to be a little bit more stable and less brittle with your URLs as you change them. We have some great new things coming to data. We have a sort of node front matter syntax. Now, importantly, you could do JavaScript data using the 11ty.js template syntax type, but now you can do this in any template syntax language. You can use arbitrary JavaScript, which I think is super powerful. I first noticed this in the Astro project, and I really liked it, so now we have it. You can also get access to the raw input of a file inside of your template as well. More runtimes. 11ty works in Dino, which is, I think, really great. Here's an example of that. And because it works in Dino, we also now have access to JSX. You can do first-party JSX. And here's an example of adding a custom template syntax that uses the render to string API to render JSX in your 11ty project. Bundlers. 11ty is still bundler compatible, but we're also bundler decoupled. We don't sort of buy into a first-party bundler at 11ty's core, and I think that's important to keep 11ty independent moving forward. But you can use bundlers in 11ty. If you go out to our docs right now, there's a great section on using custom templates to do that. And just some stats on our 11ty 3.0 version. So we, again, dropped our node dependency weight down an additional 13.3 megabyte. We're at about 22 megabyte for node modules right now, which I think is great. And this is far smaller than a lot of the alternatives out there right now. We reduced our dependencies to 176, and I think that's not necessarily the most important metric, but I think it is a great way to have stability in the project. We are pretty fast to install as well. So just some benchmarks. It's about 4.3 seconds to install 11D 3.0, and almost a minute to install Gatsby, which adds up for sure. I did update the performance benchmark, so we had some interesting numbers there. How long does it take each of these tools to generate 4,000 Markdown files? 11D takes less than 2 seconds. Hugo is less than 1 second. So 11D is about, I want to say, 2 times Hugo, but you get a lot for it, right? You get a lot of extra access to the JavaScript ecosystem, a variety of template syntaxes as well. And yeah, I think 11D does really stand out in terms of our build performance. But the number one thing I think, and that 11D is sort of known for, and has very little to do with me. 11D is known for our community and our people. We have just so many people that have built things with 11D on our authors page. We have people that have braved the leaderboards, which is pretty incredible. We have so many hundreds of sites that are for hundos on Lighthouse, which I think is amazing. We have so many open collective supporters, and I really appreciate everyone that has put money to 11D. It's such a vote of confidence. We have our folks that are helpful on Discord. We have our community moderators and people that have answered questions for folks that are coming in to ask, I don't understand how this works. Please help me. Just anyone that has answered a question on Discord or social media, or anyone that has helped anyone else with that, help someone else with 11D is such an amazing big help to the project. We have our 11D meetup folks that run the 11D meetup. We have Bob that ran the 11D bundle site, which is sort of an aggregation of all the 11D resources, which is such a huge task. Thank you, Bob. That's so amazing. And then we have some just amazing folks on the issue tracker as well. Raphael and Peter just have helped out for so much over the years. And then we have our people that have contributed on GitHub. So many people. Thank you to everyone that has even if you've just fixed a typo on the docs, that's hugely important. And then our conference organizers, David, Olivia, and Mike, just really appreciate y'all. Shout out to James. Y'all maybe are aware of the 11D possum. This came from James. It started as the cat on the balloon, and it changed to the possum. And we've sort of been iterating on different mascots over the years. And yeah, that came from James. And I do just want to recognize Cloud Cannon, because I think that they have played such a huge role in the 11D community, especially over the last year. Without Cloud Cannon, this conference would not exist. That's a very easy thing for me to say. And yeah, without Cloud Cannon, the 3.0 release would not be shipping on the timeline that we're aiming for. And importantly, with Cloud Cannon, they're already ready for the 3.0 release. We've already put in the work at Cloud Cannon to make Cloud Cannon's configuration ESM compatible, make it work with our new async configs. And so that's ready to go from day one, which I think is amazing. And just on a personal level, I've really appreciated the folks at Cloud Cannon. They're super helpful. They're super nice. They have been champions for accessibility. I think you've probably seen some folks online talking about how Cloud Cannon is really iterating on our accessibility and trying to do some really great work in that space. And they've been super amazing champions for static sites generally. You should go out to the futureofjamstack.org and look at the community that we're building there, because I think that is a super important thing, to pick up the Jamstack community and try and elevate it to something new. And so, just to wrap up, it's just such an interesting world right now. We have nothing but algorithmic timelines on social media. We have For You pages just shoveling content at us. We have large language models generating content for us. I really think that folks that are making and hosting and having full control of their own content on the web is so powerful. And in a way, I think it's very subversive too. So just ask yourself, what do you want to build on the web? What would you like to grow? What would you like to see the next generation of the web be? And I think 11ty is a great place to help you move in that direction. So let's get our hands dirty and I guess keep building for the web. Thanks, everybody.